we have a Xbox Series S that has a broken HDMI port here, and we're gonna go ahead and fix that. So I've already taken, there's two pieces of tape right here. I already took those off. I normally do not install those back on. Sometimes I do, depending on how good they look whenever I take them off. But you take out those two screws. Once you take those out, slide, lift. This is one of the easier consoles to work on. That's why my price for repair is a lot better on these ones. It's a lot cheaper. And you want to take the green screws out first. They also have a different shape to them. They have a flat top, whereas the shorter yellow screws you see here, or lime green, whatever color that is, they have a rounded top on them. The only reason I say that is because sometimes these screws are different colors. Like these ones will be black or silver, and those ones will either be silver or that lime green color. So once you have those long ones out, you just have to pull it out of this case here. It's the same thing as an Xbox One S when it comes to disassembly, pretty much. So there you have the system. You have 1, 2, 3 cards here. This is the one that you use to turn on the power here. Let me see. One of these is Wi-Fi, I believe. Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and take this off, and that just pops right off. And now these ones will need to be unscrewed, as well as all of these cards here. So we're gonna go ahead and take those cards off first. The reason I like to take those off first is because everything falls out of the system as soon as you take all the screws out the bottom, including the board, and you do not want the board to fall out with these cards still plugged in, because they do connect to the board. And if you try to pull the board out, it will break all of those connectors, and you don't want that to happen. So you gotta take all these out. And then all of those just easily pull out, just like so. This is weird because this is one of the smaller little boards here that I've seen. So now that that's out, we're just gonna have to take these out, and this is so nice that it doesn't have a disk drive or anything like that. It's just the fan, the radiator, and the power supply. And it doesn't have a hard drive either, so it has internal memory, which is nice, and it's bad at the same time. So if something goes corrupt with it, you won't be able to fix it. However, I have not seen any issues with that so far. Man, these screws are definitely in there really tight from the factory. That's okay. I could just turn the strength up. But I like the Ugga Dugga. Now we'll turn it up. Yep, here we go. Simple and easy. Alright, and then there's 4 screws right here that are T9, so the rest of them were T10 here, and also the cards, each one of those are T9. So we just gotta pull them out. now that we have those out, we can take off the fan and the power supply. So this little area right here is actually going to hold the board in when we go to take these out. So I'm not too worried about the board coming out when I'm trying to take out the power supply and the fan. This part, however, I do not replace. And the reason for that is because this card sits right on top of that. So there's no chance of it breaking at all. Not only that, but on these systems alone, they're very strong. And they're really nice when it comes to all the components. I rarely have issues with this. With the Series S's, the biggest issue obviously is the HDMI port. The HDMI ports on almost every single console break. These break less often. Same thing as the Series X. They break less often. The reason for that is the ports are wider. So there's a port right there. It's wider and it has a better base to it. Not only that, but the system is also laying flat, whereas the PS5 it's sitting sideways. So we'll just pull that out. And now that we have that out, we can look at the port. As you can see here, the port is actually split right there. And that's what's causing the issues on the output to the TV. Alright, let's get that port off and get a new one on. We're going to throw some flux on this port. It has the same solder on it that the Series X does. However, these ports are a lot easier to get off than the Series X. And the Series X takes me about an hour and 45 minutes to complete from full breakdown to full assembly and testing. And these ones take about 30-45 minutes or so. And the reason why they're so much faster is because the board is a lot thinner. The Series X has a really thick board, so even though they use the same solder, same ports and everything, the Series S is a lot quicker. So the flux is already melting, and I definitely load these up with flux because you don't want to rip any pads or ruin anything on disassembly. I'm going to go ahead and feed solder into the legs here and on the pads. What that'll do is lower the melting temperature of the solder, make the removal a lot easier. And like I said, the solder definitely takes a while for it to heat up. Usually when it starts to bubble, that's when the solder can begin to melt. So there's one bubble there. We might need some more flux. Flux is very useful when it comes to taking these ports off. The only bad part about it is if you're not careful, it will drop on you and it will burn you. I definitely have a bunch of marks from that happening. Okay, now it's starting to bubble. We'll see. Yep, now that it's bubbling, the solder is feeding in there nice. So I'm trying to angle the heat on the back a little bit. And there it goes. And do the same thing to the other side. Now that we got solder in those, we're going to lay it on the pads in the back. Uh-oh, forgot my tweezers. Let's see. Perfect. So, I forgot my tweezers, but that's alright. I was able to push it off. Now we're just going to suck the solder out of each one of these holes. The solder that they use is so strong that it just burned myself. Oh, that's a horrible smell. It's so strong that it's so hard to get off. I'm gonna try to get those from the bottom actually. So we're gonna heat it up. And once those have liquefied, okay, got most of it. Guess I put a lot more solder in than I thought, but that's alright. Might have to use wick for this. We'll, I wish I had my tweezers. This is probably gonna burn, but yeah, it's definitely gonna burn. Alright, almost got all of it there. It's only messing me up because I don't have my tweezers. Okay, so I got it all out of the back. It's just this front one that's giving us problems, and it looks like the old solder in there Still causing problems. So we're just going to load it up with our solder. Yeah, it's still causing that issue there. Hey, no one said that this was easy. Maybe I did. Yeah, we're gonna have to grab the tweezers and wick that out. Alright, so that solder there was a pain to get out, but we got it out. We had to wick it, and then had to also suck it out from the bottom there. So we just cleaned up the soldering iron here and put some new solder on the pads. Nice, and now that those pads have new solder on them, we're going to do the same thing to the port and put solder on the port. It's called tinning. What tinning does is it makes sure that the board and the HDMI port make a connection together, because you want that solder to connect to both the HDMI and the pads. If not, it'll create a cold joint. With cold joints, it won't make a full connection and it won't put out the video or audio. Alright, so now that we got solder on those little feet there, we're going to go ahead and put some more flux on here. Can never use too much flux. Once we have that flux on there, we're going to go ahead and drop this in. It should go in nice and easy. Yep. Sitting perfectly in there. The cool thing about this is, unlike the Series X, there's no epoxy underneath the board. Let's scoot this over here. Get this propped up here a little bit. We're just going to heat it up till we see those pins make a connection. And what you're looking for is fluid. So you want the solder to turn into a fluid. And you can always tell when it is turning into a fluid because it'll turn a different color here. Well, not a different color, it will go from a matte color to a shiny color. However, you can also tell whenever the port starts to show some resistance where those pads are. So it's definitely making a connection now. We're just going to hold that down and bring the heat away. Alright, looks like we have full connection. And now that that is on there, we're going to go ahead and put some solder on the feet. And on these ones, the feet do not stick out of the board. They're kind of inside of the board. So I can already see the solder coming through the holes there, but we're going to go ahead and heat it up anyways to make sure there's no oxidation. You're probably wondering if this melts the HDMI port, and that would be a good question. However, it does not melt the port. It does if you don't know what you're doing and you angle the hot air wrong, or let's say on a thinner board, if you hold the air there too long. So now we have bottom fed and top fed solder sitting on the port there. We're just going to hold it down one last time. Perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and get it installed and test it. Make sure that the port is working. And then from there we'll be able to put it together. Alright, nice thing about the Series S, no assembly required in order to test it. You don't have to put any screws in or anything like that. I guess I shouldn't say no assembly, because you do have to put all of the pieces on. However, you don't have to put any of the screws on. Now that it's good, we're going to go ahead and get it all put back together and test it one more time. Well, I didn't show the assembly, but that's alright because the assembly is the same as disassembly, just in reverse. So as you can see, it is good to go.